Hi, welcome to the Hurricane Utah Adult Religion class, sponsored by the Hurricane Utah North Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm Mike Parker, and since 2008, it's been my privilege to be the instructor for this class. The Hurricane Utah Adult Religion class meets on Thursday evenings between September and May to discuss the scriptures, teachings, and history of the restored Church of Jesus Christ. If you live in or are visiting the Hurricane St. George area, I'd love to have you join us. Time and location are available on the class website. There's a link to that in the show notes just below this video. Also on the class website, you can download my notes, which includes footnotes documenting my sources, this PowerPoint presentation, and handouts that I distribute in class. Please note that this YouTube channel and the class website are not official sites of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Hurricane Utah North Stake, or any other church unit or department. I alone am responsible for the content on these sites. What you're about to see is a recording of my notes for one of the lessons. If you enjoy this video, please click the like button and share it with a friend. And please feel free to subscribe if you'd like to be notified when new content is posted to this channel. My friends, the gospel of Jesus Christ is true. Joseph Smith was a prophet of God, and the authority and keys that he held are now vested in the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And most importantly, Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. I hope you enjoy this lesson. This is the second of 5 lessons on the book of Isaiah. In this lesson, I'll be discussing the prophecies Isaiah gave to the people of Judah around 731 BC. At that time, the kingdom of Judah was threatened militarily by her northern neighbors. Isaiah's oracles informed the king of Judah how the Lord would deliver his people. I've prepared a handout that explains Isaiah's prophecy of the Immanuel child that I'll discuss during this lesson. There's a link in the show notes to download this handout in PDF format. You can also go to www.huarc.org to download all the handouts, notes, and slideshows from this course. The material in this lesson consists of 5 major sections. Chapters 7 and 8 are about the Immanuel child. The first 7 verses of chapter 9 are a prophecy of a new age and a new ruler. Isaiah 9 verse 8 through 10 verse 4 is a warning that judgment will come upon Israel from Assyria. Chapter 10 verses 5 through 32 prophesy that judgment will come against a proud Assyria. Isaiah 10 verse 33 through 12 verse 6 concern the future peaceful kingdom and the heir of David's throne. As I've discussed in the last several lessons, the Assyrian Empire was the great power in the ancient Near East during Isaiah's lifetime. Assyria had been in decline for nearly a century, during which time the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah had experienced some level of independence and prosperity. In 745 BC, a coup in Nineveh put Tiglath-Pileser III on the Assyrian throne. He transformed the Assyrian army into a fighting machine that dominated the entire ancient Near East. His reign marks the beginning of the Neo-Assyrian Empire that would last for over a century. Tiglath-Pileser defeated the Babylonians, the Medes, and the Hittites, and subjected them to tribute. He then directed his armies west into Syria and Phoenicia. In 733, he invaded the northern kingdom of Israel and deported 13,520 of her people to Assyria. In order to understand chapters 7 and 8 of Isaiah, we need to be familiar with the nations and leaders involved in the Syro-Ephraimite War of 732 to 728 BC. The kingdom of Israel, also known as Ephraim, with its capital at Samaria, was ruled by Pekah. Isaiah also called him the son of Remaliah. The nation of Syria, also known as Aram, with its capital at Damascus, was ruled by Rezin. The nation of Judah, with its capital at Jerusalem, was ruled by Jotham. With Tiglath-Pileser's armies occupied in the east, King Pekah of Israel and King Rezin of Syria entered an alliance with several other local rulers who wanted to throw off Assyrian rule. King Jotham of Judah refused to participate in the coalition against Assyria. Israel and Syria responded to Jotham's decision by attacking Judah to force her to join their alliance. Shortly after the war began, King Jotham died and was succeeded by his young son, the wicked Ahaz. Judah suffered significant defeats during the reign of King Ahaz, including losing 120,000 men in battle on a single day. The armies of Syria and Israel marched to Jerusalem and besieged the city. It was during this desperate time that the Lord commanded the prophet Isaiah to go to King Ahaz with a message. Isaiah 7, verses 3 through 9, New Revised Standard Version. Quote, "Then the Lord said to Isaiah, Go out to meet Ahaz, you and your son Shear-jashub, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the fuller's field, and say to him, Take heed, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint because of these two smoldering stumps of firebrands, because of the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram and the son of Remaliah. Because Aram, with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah, has plotted evil against you, saying, Let us go up against Judah and cut off Jerusalem and conquer it for ourselves and make the son of Tabeel king in it. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, It shall not stand, and it shall not come to pass. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered, no longer a people. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you do not stand firm in faith, you shall not stand at all." Unquote. The Lord told Isaiah to take his son, Shear-jashub, and go meet King Ahaz as the king was inspecting the water supply for the city in preparation for a siege. Like Hosea, Isaiah gave his sons names that were intended to serve as prophetic promises. Shear-jashub's name means a remnant will return. This was probably intended as a sign to Ahaz that only a few of the enemy invaders from Syria and Israel would return home. The rest would be defeated. The Lord told Isaiah to deliver a message to Ahaz that he shouldn't be afraid of Syria and Israel because they were like two stumps of smoldering logs. They used to burn, but their power had almost died out. Isaiah was further instructed to prophesy that within 65 years, the northern kingdom of Israel, Ephraim, would no longer exist as a nation, and to encourage Ahaz to stand fast and have faith that the Lord would deliver Judah from these two aggressor nations. As proof of these promises, the Lord challenged Ahaz to ask for a sign that this prophecy would be fulfilled. Isaiah 7, verses 10 through 13, New Revised Standard Version. Quote, "Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, saying, Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary mortals, that you weary my God also?" Unquote. Isaiah told the king to ask for a big sign, something as deep as Sheol, the underground world of the spirits of the dead, or as high as heaven, or the sky. But Ahaz declined, claiming that he didn't want to challenge or provoke the Lord. But this was false piety, a smokescreen to cover up Ahaz's lack of faith. and Isaiah chastised him for testing God's patience. Despite Ahaz's reluctance to ask for a sign, Isaiah told Ahaz that the Lord would give him a sign anyway. Isaiah 7, verses 14 through 17, New Revised Standard Version. Quote, "Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. He shall eat curds and honey by the time he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land before whose 2 kings you are in dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring on you and your people and on your ancestral house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria." Unquote. The sign Isaiah gave Ahaz was that a child would be born, whose very name, Immanuel, would remind Ahaz that God is with us. Verse 14 is one of the best known passages in Isaiah, in part because it's cited in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew quoted Isaiah's words to King Ahaz as a prophecy of the birth of Jesus Christ. Matthew's use of Isaiah, however, is an example of applied context. It does not represent the original context of Isaiah's prophecy. Isaiah's prophecy indicates that the Immanuel child would eat curds and honey, choice foods that were difficult to obtain during a military siege. This sign would have indicated to Ahaz that by the time the child was weaned, between 2 and 3 years old, Syria and Israel would be defeated, and the kingdom of Judah would be at peace. This prophecy came to pass. Ahaz appealed to Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria for aid, and the Assyrian army crushed the Syro-Ephraimite rebellion only 2 years later. Isaiah's prophecy also promised that, before the Immanuel child would know the difference between good and evil, the lands of Israel and Syria would be desolate. Among ancient Jews, the age of accountability was when a child entered puberty, so this prophecy would have to have been fulfilled within 12 to 13 years. This also happened. Syria was overthrown by the Assyrians the following year, and Israel about 10 years later. To fulfill Isaiah's prophecy, the Immanuel child would have to have been born soon after Isaiah declared it to Ahaz. Matthew's use of the word virgin to describe the Immanuel child's mother also has some complications. The Hebrew word used to describe the mother of the child in Isaiah 7 verse 14 is ha-almah, which means a young woman. There is no word in Hebrew for virgin in the technical sense of a woman who has never had sexual intercourse. There is, however, a word for such a woman in Greek, parthenos. When Jewish scribes translated the Hebrew scriptures into Greek in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC, a work called the Septuagint, they used the term parthenos in their translation of Isaiah 7 verse 14. Matthew and other authors of the New Testament books read and quoted from the Greek Old Testament, or Septuagint. Based on the use of parthenos in the Greek translation of Isaiah 7 verse 14, it would have been natural for Matthew to assume that Isaiah's prophecy was about Mary, the virgin mother of Jesus. But if Matthew, either knowingly or unknowingly, gave Isaiah's prophecy of the Immanuel child a new context and a new meaning, then he is in good company, because lots of prophets have done the same thing with Isaiah and other scriptural writings. Paul's interpretations of Old Testament passages in his epistles don't usually line up with their original contexts. And Nephi told us that he did liken all scriptures, including Isaiah, unto himself and his people, giving them unique interpretations that applied to his posterity. And as we're going to see in this lesson and upcoming lessons, Joseph Smith did the same thing that Matthew, Paul, and Nephi did. He gave the words of Isaiah and other biblical prophets a context that had meaning and importance to Latter-day Saints in the last days. So, if Isaiah's prophecy of the Immanuel child wasn't about Jesus, who was it about? Isaiah didn't explicitly tell us. However, it's possible that the prophecy was fulfilled by the birth of his son, Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz. Isaiah 8, verses 1 through 4, New Revised Standard Version. Quote, "Then the Lord said to me, take a large tablet and write on it in common characters, belonging to Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz. And I will get reliable witnesses, Uriah the priest, and Zechariah, the son of Jeberechiah, to attest for me. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call his name Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz, for before the boy knows how to cry, my father, or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria." Unquote. Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz was the son of Isaiah and his wife, an unnamed woman who had the gift of prophecy. His birth date fits into the prophetic timeline announced by Isaiah. His name means the spoil speeds, the prey hastens. His name was a sign that Assyria would invade and subdue Syria and Israel and carry their treasures away before the child would know how to speak. And this happened. Assyria conquered Syria and Israel only 2 years after the prophecy was given, when Isaiah's son was just over a year old. Isaiah further connected the meaning of Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz's name to the name Immanuel, God is with us, by warning that the might of Syria and Israel that Judah had experienced thus far was nothing compared to the overwhelming power of the Assyrian army that the Lord would bring upon them. Isaiah 8, verses 5 through 10, translation by Robert Alter. Quote, "And the Lord spoke to me once again, saying, inasmuch as this people has spurned the quietly flowing rivers of Shiloh, and rejoiced in Retzin and the son of Remaliah, therefore the Master is about to bring up against them the great and mighty waters of the Euphrates, the king of Assyria, and all his glory. And it shall rise over its channels, and go over all its banks, and pass through Judah, flooding and sweeping up to the neck it shall reach. And its outstretched wings shall fill your land, Immanuel." Take note, O people, and be terror-stricken. Give ear, all far reaches of the earth. Gird yourselves and be terror-stricken. Gird yourselves and be terror-stricken. Lay out counsel, and it shall be overturned. Speak a word, and it shall not come to be, for God is with us. Unquote. Ahaz disregarded Isaiah's counsel to trust in Jehovah for deliverance, and instead asked the Assyrians to come to his aid. He took gold and silver from the temple and used it to bribe Tiglath-Pileser into defending Judah from the Syro-Ephraimite alliance. Tiglath-Pileser and his army destroyed the Syrian capital, Damascus, deported the Syrian people, and killed King Retzin of Syria. He also occupied most of Israel and deported some of her people. Pekah, king of Israel, was killed in a conspiracy. Instead of helping Ahaz, however, Tiglath-Pileser subjugated Judah as well and made her a vassal state. Ahaz built a pagan altar in the Jerusalem temple that was an exact copy of the one in Damascus, and the people of Judah worshipped the gods of the Assyrians. Confronted with Ahaz's wickedness and contempt for the Lord's counsel, Isaiah prophesied of a coming time when Israel would have a righteous king who would sit on the throne of David forever. This is the first of Isaiah's messianic prophecies. Isaiah 9, verses 2 through 7, King James Version. Quote, "The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Thou hast multiplied the nation and increased the joy. They joy before thee according to the joy in harvest, and as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For thou hast broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." Unquote. Isaiah prophesied that the people who were once lost in the darkness would now walk in the light. He portrayed the coming Messiah as a great military leader who would enlarge Israel's borders, throw off the nations that oppressed her, and celebrate his victory by burning the clothing and equipment of the defeated enemy soldiers. This Messiah would be a child born to Israel who would have kingly authority. The government shall be upon his shoulder. Isaiah's prophecy gives 4 named titles for him. The first is Wonderful Counselor. There shouldn't be a comma between those 2 words. This probably refers to his abilities as a military strategist, as described in the previous 3 verses. Second, Mighty God describes the Messiah's divine nature and his authority. Third, Everlasting Father. This shouldn't be understood in a Trinitarian sense, but as an idiom for the king as a protector of his people. Finally, Prince of Peace envisions the king as one who establishes peace within and among nations through military strength, as the preceding verses and the first 2 titles in verse 6 indicate. According to verse 7, the Messiah's kingdom will be a permanent one, not one held by a mortal who dies and then turns it over to another. The zeal of the Lord of hosts, his intense devotion to his people, to justice and to righteousness, will accomplish this. Isaiah's next prophecy described Assyria as a tool in the Lord's hand that he would use to afflict the arrogant and wicked people of the northern kingdom of Israel. The leaders of Israel had misled the people. The people themselves had no compassion, and they robbed poor people, widows, and orphans. This oracle has 4 sections, each of which ends with a description of destruction that will come upon the people for their wickedness. Despite the horrible things that were going to happen to them, they persisted in their sinful behavior. Therefore, the Lord's anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. The imagery here is not one of a loving hand reaching out to comfort, but a raised hand that is ready to strike. This next section is a poem in the form of a woe saying against Assyria. In the previous passage, Assyria was described metaphorically as a tool in the Lord's hand that he used to inflict punishment on unrepentant Israel. In this passage, Isaiah prophesied that the king of Assyria would go beyond the use the Lord intended for him, and that the Lord would punish him for this. The oracle described a boastful Assyrian king who listed all the great cities he had conquered, and then promised to do to Jerusalem what he had done to Samaria, the capital city of Israel. When the king would come to Judah and threaten Jerusalem, the Lord promised that he would punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria. Returning to the metaphor of Assyria as a tool, the Lord rhetorically asked if the tool is greater than the one who uses it. It's not, and promised that he would destroy the Assyrians. At that point, Isaiah declared, the people of Judah would finally realize that his counsel to King Ahaz of Judah had been correct. They shouldn't have relied on Assyria to protect them from Syria and Israel. They should have relied on the Lord instead. Despite that, Isaiah predicted, only a remnant of the people of Judah would return to worshiping the Lord Jehovah. This prophecy ends with a wonderful visual of the king of Assyria marching as far south as Nob, a town only 3 or 4 miles northeast of Jerusalem, and then stopping and shaking his fist at Jerusalem in impotent rage. Everything Isaiah prophesied came to pass. Tiglath-Pileser III, the Assyrian king, died in 727 BC. He was succeeded by his son Shalmaneser V. In 725, King Hoshea of Israel suspended paying tribute to Assyria and allied himself with Egypt. In response, Shalmaneser besieged Samaria, the capital of Israel, for 3 years. Shalmaneser died suddenly in 722. He was succeeded by Sargon II. Sargon quickly took Samaria and carried the people of Israel into captivity. Sargon also overran Judah and besieged Jerusalem, as Isaiah had foretold, but he did not capture it. In 721, the Babylonians revolted against Assyrian rule, and Sargon was forced to turn his attention away from Judah to deal with troubles in the east. Judah was spared, although it remained a vassal state to Assyria. Isaiah's prophecy of the destruction of Assyria and the return of the people of Judah to the worship of Jehovah segued into another messianic prophecy. His next prophecy built on the one back at the beginning of chapter 9. He foretold a time when there would be peace, not just among mankind, but even between animals. This is the period Christians call the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the King of Israel. Like some of Isaiah's other prophecies, this one doesn't start at the beginning of a chapter. It begins in chapter 10, verse 33. Isaiah began by foretelling that Judah would be cut down in size, just as someone cuts down or cuts back a forest. After this, all that would be left of the people of Judah would be the stump of Jesse, who was the father of King David. The King James Version calls it a stem. From that stump would grow a new shoot, or rod, which represents the Messiah. According to Isaiah, the Lord would destroy all but a small remnant of Judah. But even though that remnant would seem to be dead, new life would spring from it, just as new shoots appear from what appears to be a dead stump. The prophecy describes the conditions the people will enjoy under the Messianic reign. Isaiah 11, verses 1 through 9, New Revised Standard Version. Quote, "A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." Unquote. Isaiah prophesied that, unlike the mortal fallible kings of Israel and Judah, the Messianic king will reign with perfect justice, not judging by what his eyes see or his ears hear, but with righteousness and equity. When this day comes, the categories of predator and prey will no longer exist. Humans and livestock will not fear the wild animals that have preyed on them in the fallen world. In the second half of this prophecy, Isaiah described how the Messiah would gather the scattered children of Israel to their homeland. Isaiah 11, verses 10 through 13, New Revised Standard Version. Quote, "On that day the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. On that day the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that is left of his people, from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Ethiopia, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastlands of the sea. He will raise a signal for the nations, and will assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The jealousy of Ephraim shall depart, the hostility of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not be jealous of Judah, and Judah shall not be hostile towards Ephraim. Unquote. Here Isaiah referred to the Davidic Messiah as the root of Jesse. The Messiah will set up an ensign, a signal flag or banner around which an army rallies, to call the people of Israel and restore them to their land of promise. When this happens, the jealousy and hostility between the northern kingdom of Israel, or Ephraim, and the southern kingdom of Judah will end. Furthermore, at that day, the people will praise the Lord because the Holy One of Israel dwells among them. When the resurrected prophet Moroni appeared to Joseph Smith in September 1823, he quoted several passages of scripture. Among them was the 11th chapter of Isaiah, saying that it was about to be fulfilled. Since the time Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery received the keys of the gathering of Israel at the Kirtland Temple, one important mission of the Church of Jesus Christ has been to gather scattered Israel. In March 1838, Joseph Smith received a revelation that gave a new interpretation of Isaiah 11 as it applies to the rise of the restored Church of Jesus Christ. That revelation is now canonized as Doctrine and Covenants 113, verses 1 through 6. That revealed interpretation is a modern applied context of Isaiah's prophecy, one that Isaiah didn't intend and that the New Testament church didn't use. It applies uniquely to us in the latter days. The table on this slide lists the figures in Isaiah's prophecy, how Isaiah interpreted them, and how Joseph Smith's revelation gave them a fresh interpretation for the latter days. In Isaiah's prophecy, the Messiah is a descendant of David, heir to his throne, and an ensign to gather his people. The Messiah is also a rod or shoot that comes out of the supposedly dead stump of Israel and restores her to her former glory, just as a new tree can grow from a stump that has been cut to the ground. Recontextualized for modern revelation, Joseph Smith can be considered a shoot that comes out of the stem of Jesse. Christ is the trunk of the tree, and Joseph, his servant in the last days, is an offshoot of that trunk who helped accomplish the gathering of Israel and prepared the way for the second coming of Christ. Both interpretations are legitimate. Which one you use depends on the context in which you apply it. It's similar to Isaiah's vision of the millennial temple that I discussed last week. Isaiah envisioned the restored temple in Jerusalem, but his prophecy, framed in a modern context, can be applied to the Salt Lake Temple. It's also similar to Matthew's use of the Immanuel child prophecy as a message of Christ's birth. Isaiah had a different child in mind, but that doesn't mean Matthew couldn't reframe Isaiah's revelation for a context appropriate to the New Testament period and message. All of these are examples of what Nephi called likening all scriptures unto us, that it might be for our profit and learning. The final chapter in this lesson contains a song of thanksgiving about the coming age when the heir to David's throne will reign in peace. It gives praise to the Lord, who will no longer punish Israel for her sins. This chapter is part of the inspiration for the Methodist hymn, "The Lord is My Light," which has been included in Latter-day Saint hymn books since 1948. Isaiah 12, verses 1 through 6, King James Version. Quote, "And in that day thou shalt say, O Lord, I will praise thee. Though thou wast angry with me, thine anger is turned away, and thou comfortedst me. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord Jehovah is my strength and my song. He has also become my salvation. Therefore, with joy shall ye draw water out of the wells of salvation. And in that day shall ye say, Praise the Lord, call upon his name, declare his doings among the people, Make mention that his name is exalted. Sing unto the Lord, for he hath done excellent things. This is known in all the earth. Cry out and shout, thou inhabitant of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel in the midst of thee. Unquote. So what is the take-home message from these chapters of Isaiah? First, Immanuel, God is with us. We should reject the world's popular cultural, religious, and political systems and trust in the Lord to protect us. Second, God's Messiah, Jesus Christ, was born into the world as the son of David and heir to David's throne. Third, the Messiah will come again to gather Israel, establish God's eternal kingdom, and administer justice in peace. The preparation for his coming began with the restoration of the gospel through the prophet Joseph Smith.